call the meeting to order, folks.
Order.
Order. Thank you very much. Kathy, thank you for being here and documenting all of this. Heather, would you like to just briefly introduce yourself? Heather's the newest member of the Budget Committee. I'll let her speak.
Heather Porter. I've been a resident for about a little over a year and a half now. I've been in the area for 20 years. Previously as a Littleton resident, I'm a Littleton resident, and I worked at AHEAD for 10 years as a director of operations, and now I'm working at Secure Network Services. And I've got 2 kids in school, 6 and 10. All right.
Contributing to the community of Littleton.
Yes. Great.
That's a little busy.
Just a little. And I'm on the Rotary Club. And I'm on the Rotary Club, so my kids know me about it. Hi, bud.
Well, Heather, thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
Without further ado, I guess, Andrew, I'll turn it over to you and you can kind of just lay out what we're going to be doing. And
Sure. So tonight we're going to go over the town manager budget. What I've done is gone through the budget that the department heads have submitted for the proposed budget and tried to find as much savings as we could, or in some cases had to increase some expenses. We don't have a complete list of warrant articles yet, but I hope to have that for you for the next meeting. And then after that, we go over, after looking at these, we talked about if the budget was under 3%, whether or not we wanted to spend it to come and present their budget in detail to the budget committee. There's some that you likely would want to anyways, just because of the amount that the budget entails. Like, for example, if the police department's low, I'm sure you still want to hear from them. But we actually have Chief here, so maybe we can take care of that. And we can go over the default budget as well and try to figure out our upcoming meetings. I think there was a conflict with next month that we have to reschedule.
you were wondering about the
On
election day.
Election
We
day.
talked
We
about
did
it
the
briefly.
15th.
Yeah,
It's
we
the
already
15th.
did 15th. Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
And
But if we could reconfirm those dates, that we should.
Instead of, yes.
That's good. I was going to leave it.
and then just review and approve.
Did everyone have enough time and were they able to open them, the minutes?
We didn't, I just sent it out
A
When-
little while ago.
Oh, no, I didn't.
So maybe
I have
we
not
should wait
read.
until
The next meeting.
the next meeting
For the minutes to be
for the
read.
minutes to be
I know
approved.
it's on my phone now, but
That's okay. No, you need to have time to read them.
So the dates as we have them listed currently then, October 4th obviously being today, November 15th, December 6th, December 8th. Actually, December 6th and then December 8th and 15th for the school. What we're looking at.
And also, there are 2 work sessions that we were invited to for the school board. They invited us to attend. I don't know the time or the place, but we could get that information out to you once they confirm that time.
could you give those dates again, because I don't have that note with me.
Okay, so the town meeting dates, the
Yeah.
town budget meeting,
Yeah.
October 4th today, November 15th,
Yeah,
and December 6th. And the school, we had December 8th and December 15th. I think we were a little unsure about time. I think the last I heard from them was going to be 4:30
right.
in the cafeteria or the music room, but we'll certainly confirm that before
And
we...
the 15th and the 6th are both here at 4 o'clock, yes?
Yes.
And then the work sessions for the school board doing their budget work, November 14th and November 28th. I don't have the time or the place at this time.
But I guess the thought on that is if anybody would like to go and sit in on them, that I'm not sure if it's going to be an opportunity to contribute or not, but at least if nothing else, you could listen, and probably once we have the meetings with them, it might make it a little bit more productive. And realistically, on the town side, Andrew, we're going to end up having 1 or 2 more meetings, depending on what may come up, but probably at least one for the warrant articles, realistically. There always seems to be something that happens, and there again with the school, it'd be probably a little unrealistic to think that everything could be done in 2 meetings without having some follow-up. questions. So. All right. Oh, so this is a partial list of warrant articles, isn't it?
Yeah,
This is the list you didn't have? No.
Yeah. There's a few more items
Yeah.
that we'll be adding. For example, while you're on that, there's upgrades that we have to do to our server for all the town offices, and that'll take some expense. And then also we're looking at a phone system upgrade.
Andy, speak up, please.
This year.
A little louder.
Yeah, so we were just saying there's two additional warrant articles that might be on here. One that definitely will be is a server upgrades. We need some upgrades to our server, which we can go over in more detail when I bring up. And then also we have we're potentially looking at a phone system to integrate all the town offices into one. Potentially see some long-term savings.
And who are you looking at?
For providers, we're looking at SNS, and then also the new cable provider charter, and we've also looked at, I believe it was SimQuest.
Now, in Charter's relationship to Time Warner is
They bought.
They bought them. It's going to be Spectrum now, I think. the new company.
so Time Warner will be coming Spectrum.
Which is owned by Charter.
Right. We're still about that.
Because in that telephone business today, I mean, now that's evolved to the point where, I know when we last did ours 5 years ago, the guy told us, he says in 5 years there's going to be a whole new deal available that's basically going to be all computer-based and internet-based.
So we're looking at, and actually, there's a lot of benefits to going with SNS. I mean, they're a local company, but also the integration of technology. For example, when we do it, I plan on not actually having a phone handset on my desk. I'll be able to answer either from my phone or it'll come through as an app on my cell phone. So it'll be like
What's SNS?
Secure Network Systems.
Oh,
I keep pointing at other.
Yeah, that's right.
I work there.
Yeah.
okay. I thought it had, N, not
Yeah.
and.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that means
My accent.
your accent, your Vermont accent.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Hey,
hey, Littleton's only a short way over the border, Karen. You're not deep in the heart of, but anyway.
I spend more of my waking hours here than I do at
I was
home.
going to say.
I didn't know, actually, I probably should have known, but I wouldn't have realized right off the top of my head that you guys were going to be into that part of it. But I mean, it's the stuff that you can do with that, like, I mean, within the system that you set up, you don't actually technically have to make a phone call, right? I mean, it's all, I mean, if you call a fire station, it's actually within the system, so you're not actually going out into,
Yeah.
you're not making a chargeable
It's
phone
more
call
secure.
system. Hope so.
Hope so.
Okay, sorry.
Right.
enough
Well,
of that.
everything's hacked nowadays, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Do you want to pass those up through?
Please.
Yeah.
Does everybody have a new budget?
No.
No, we have the budget
It's
from,
it's different than the one that you
From
gave us
before?
last time.
Okay, there's some improvements.
It's in lieu of that
A
other
bunch
piece
of
of
trees.
bunch of papers, so,
You could toss it if you wanted
Yeah.
to, or you
The other
can
one?
keep it.
The other one.
That was the draft.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
but they do have dates on them, though, so
Yes,
you can,
okay.
10-4.
Yeah.
On the front.
10-4.
You could save that one just so you can see how awesome this one
well,
is.
this one's not as thick. That's a good sign, right?
you printed it double side.
It's not easy to hold.
That one?
You're
Yes, that's what it said. So just one extra.
Okay.
This is a 10-4, the 27th.
Yes.
Okay.
So, would you like to go over changes, or?
Well, whatever
Okay.
format you've got in,
All right.
and you and Karen, whatever you'd like to.
Yeah. And
You can turn it
jump
over
in
to
and
me
out.
whenever.
Yeah. Okay. If it's up to you. If you want
I
to
will
start,
do
go for
it.
Yeah, go for it.
Took a good look at the revenues and what we proposed last year and went down through and tried to adjust. If you look at your page 2 of 39, I have noted in gray where some of the changes are. There might be a slight change in the departmental budgets, but we have a default revenue And we have proposed because we're hoping with some of this, there'll be some adjustments in the expenditures and revenues to change some of the numbers. We have added a line under income from departments for grant reimbursement for admin work. We have a grant administrator helping us and someone that will be able to write grants and go out and look for grants for us. And in part of that process, we'll be getting revenue to offset a majority of the expenditures for this. So overall, the budgets between the default and the proposed revenues for 2016 are slightly lower than what I have in the default for 2017. So if you look at that page, you're going to follow the column down to the end. The proposed revenues for 2016 was $3,091,471. The default revenues is $3,097,481. So there's not a lot of difference in revenues at this point.
And why, have we always had a default revenue?
Not always. The problem is when you adjust some of those budgets that have to have a revenue neutral budget, you have to change their revenues. So if you look in the column that says 2017 proposed revenues, that is $3,083,027. And one of the bigger differences there is the parking meters. We're making some adjustments in the parking meter. And that is a revenue neutral. So whatever the expenditures are, we have to budget for that revenue. Even though we might get in more, if we get more in, it goes to the special revenue fund balance for parking meters. And it can be used for the purposes that it's approved for, which is improving streets, sidewalks, adding more parking meters, so on, improving what we have.
And typically, we have usually had a overrun, if you would, on the
Right, a little. It's been a little the last few years, so we're making some adjustments to that budget. Okay? And now I'm going to go to the next couple of pages. So your page 3 of 39 and 4 of 39. I'm sorry the way that it's coming out on the...
Karen, excuse me, before you go further, year to date, I'm looking at that column on parking meters.
Yes.
You've taken in about $36,000.
Right.
And our proposed is 73.
There is a delay on the revenues because you collect the money, it has to go to the bank, it gets counted by the bank. We don't count it, it goes into a locked canister.
Okay.
So there's usually a little bit of delay on getting the revenue information. So we may be a month behind on some of this
But it
revenue.
looks like it's going to be lower than
It will be a little
Okay,
bit
all
lower.
right, so I'm not,
And we will have to make some budget adjustments.
thank you.
So, under the, this is the budget summary. So this would be your picture summary of each individual department totals coming into this page. So what I've done with Andrew, we went through and did a town manager proposal. So the proposal you received in the draft budget you got the other couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago, was kind of a combination of the town manager and department head's budget. We fine-tuned a lot of the numbers. The town manager made some decisions on making some changes. So we have this gray column on your page. Look at the very bottom of it, and on page 4.
We don't have gray.
Page 4, your next
Oh, no, you're
page.
saying it's not gray on theirs.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not on yours?
So,
No.
so if
This
you
is the
want,
third column from the right,
No,
is the
not at all.
town manager proposed.
anything that's changed.
I wonder why.
It's
Mine's gray.
Okay.
Must be when I copied it, didn't copy in gray. I apologize. It's the town manager's proposed budget.
Okay.
Okay? So as you can see, the new numbers, and then we put the difference between the town manager's budget and the 2016 adjusted budget. So you can see the different numbers. Then you see the percentage different from 2016. So you can do a quick snapshot and see what's up and what's down on those budgets. When we get all done, the town manager's budget is $180,140 different than 2016's approved adjusted budget. That's 2.1% difference for all of the budgets totaled together. So there was a lot of things happening. There's been a lot of contracts that's been revised, that's been put out to bid, and new numbers have come in, and a lot of changes have happened.
Just for a point of clarification, you said the approved budget from last year for the voters, that would include the proposed operating budget and those warrant articles?
That pertain to the budget, such as the full-time police officer. If you look at the bottom,
Okay.
on the left-hand side, I have plus adjustments for WA.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone could.
So I added the warrant article for the police officer, the SEA contract, 'cause that was a one-year contract, the part-time to full-time librarian, the loader and the tractor lease that was approved, because it's a 2-year lease, so there's payments every year. So I adjusted the 2016 budget to the $8,578,466. So when I take the difference, that $180,000, if you take that $8,578,000 and the other dollars, add the 180.40 to it, you come up to the town manager's proposed budget, which is a difference of 2.1%.
Can our lease payments on the loader and tractor $58,000?
That's 2 lease payments. That's
That's what?
the loader is roughly $43,000, and the tractor is
And
$13,000.
that's lease cost.
Lease, but it's leased to purchase. In other words, at the end of 3 years, it becomes ours.
Okay.
Okay? Now, originally, the default budget was a lot more than what we have here. The default budget here says the difference is 0.70%. When I gave you the default draft last time, it was over 2%. So,
Karen, could you go back there just a second? So the adjusted 2016 budget, $8,578,000, and the 2017 town manager proposed $8,758,000.
yes.
Okay, that the 2.1% is the difference between those two.
Yes.
For those
And that's that $180,000.
Yes. Now, in the original department proposed budget we had, the proposed budget we had handed you last time, we were looking at a larger increase. That's down to 3.22%. And that line is going to go away. That's no longer going to be our proposed. The town manager proposal will become what we're proposing. Okay? So that's an overview.
Yeah.
We're going to go down real quick on each one of these budgets. Remember that proposed draft one we came up with? Last time's going to go away, but it's still on this sheet. So is the default. So the town manager proposal, I've tried to identify anything that changed with little notes. Like
What page you at, Karen?
I'm on page 5 of 39. So the difference between the town manager's budget and the 2016 budget for executive is $7,461. That's a 3% difference. Included in this budget, we've had to do some adjustments for the New Hampshire retirement system, because the New Hampshire retirement system the day I gave you your budgets, after I'd already done all the changes last time, I got in new rates for New Hampshire retirement system.
And
So-
those new rates are effective for,
7/1/2017.
so half a year on the current, and
Yes.
do you want to share those with us now?
I'll
Or?
give you the rates for 2000.
And this is a 2-year again then that they've done?
Yes.
7/1/17 to 6/30/19?
Yes. And I didn't bring my old rates with me, so what I'll be doing is thinking off the top of my
That's
head,
okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The non-union, the employee, the group one they call it, that went from 11.17% to 11.38%. That's New Hampshire retirement system, which is actually line
10.
10.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
The police, and I can't remember what it was off the top of my, I know it was just over 26%. It went to 29, or going to 29.43%.
What is the, do you know what the employee portion of that is?
It was, and I'm thinking this off the top, 11% for police, 7% for the regular employees.
And are those numbers also going up?
Those are in here and they're going up.
Okay.
The fire department is going to be 31.89. And I know it's right around 29% right now.
Yeah.
The fire department employees pay 11%. I've used an average for all my numbers because it's half a year change. I used for the employees 11.28%. For the police, 27.91%. And for the fire department, 30.53% is what I used when I did my
So
calculations.
this will all be going up?
Yes.
Okay.
But
For
that's
half
just,
a year?
that's just averaging the first half and the second.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on further unless there's something that you want to talk about on here.
So in these proposed budgets right now, we're still negotiating some contracts. So we do not know what the salary increases would be. So that is not included in this proposed budget.
None of the union employees have a salary increase in this
In
budget.
this budget, so we have to be aware of that. That the 2%, whatever it is, it does not include.
The 2.5% is only on the non-union employees.
Okay.
So
That's-
just the non-union.
That's what you put in for a
Right.
placekeeper, so to speak.
We are looking at several different plans on insurance. And right now, I'm only putting in a 10% increase on the insurance that we currently offer the employees.
So if we're able to realize savings, that'll impact.
Yes. hopefully.
So a couple of the items on the executive offices. We looked at the contract for the mapping professional services, line 12, and we adjusted it down to $15,000 because the contract has dropped on that, and that's line 12 on the executive budget. And we adjusted it down for the default and the last proposed and then this one. We also have professional services for grant up to 10 hours per month, and that's to help us with the grants, try to get us more grants, someone that can control the grants and knows all the ins and outs, that we have very little time to make sure, because every grant has different restrictions.
And those will also have offsetting revenues that go with it. We already have some funds that are set aside for that.
And Karen, we've tried that in past years, maybe with different levels of success. And you feel better or differently now about having a grant writer person as opposed to 5 or 10 or 15 years ago? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, and this is kind of a different function too. The grant writing is a portion of the activity, and a larger piece of it is the actual kind of financial management of the grants and ensuring that all reports are entered, and whenever there's
The follow-up work to make sure that,
and with all that we have going on with the river district right now, and also the sewer system and a number of other grants, it's critical. They're all different funding pots with different reporting requirements.
we need a caretaker.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you have somebody
oh,
for
excuse me.
that yet?
Yeah, so we put it out to bid, and we received 2 companies' proposals, and we went with NCIC, and they'll be using Kathy Conway, which people in Littleton are pretty familiar with. She has worked with them, and also Michael Welch, who used to work for the city of St. Johnsburg. It's a good team. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
I know Molly Heinger's director of chamber has been and that's what she primarily did, and she's been pretty efficient at getting grants for us. For river
She was in
district and everything.
NCIC, she did that, yeah.
So,
I know I do not have the time anymore to do any more to do with grants. This last 2 years have been very, very busy, and I am not able to keep up. So, and even with Andrew, I know it's hard to keep everything going the way it should be, and we don't want to follow any more behind. So, I'm going to move on to elections.
You know the outcome?
If I did, I wouldn't be working here.
You'd be on one of those talk shows.
The town manager's budget, adjusted budget, is $1,243 above the pages 6 of 39. Is $1,243 more than last year's. It's about a 1% difference. There are reduced meetings and reduced elections. There is an increase in New Hampshire retirement system. If you want me to stop at any time, I will. Tax collecting. This is a reduction of $5,509, and it's a reduction of 7%.
Where are you?
I'm on page 7.
Okay.
I should tell you what page
Yeah.
I am on.
One of the things that you'll see is that we're trying to accurately fund positions and other things that from where their actual time's being spent. So, for example, the sewer fund, you'll see that we have been moving some of the wages from a line item, like for example, tax collector spends quite a bit of time actually doing sewer collections. And you'll see that in public works and other areas too. So they're just trying to more accurately reflect how time is spent.
Although sometimes when you do that, it's been a little hard to compare year to year because it wasn't in the same place in one year as it was.
Right.
And at some point it gets caught up and it's clearer in the big picture. I mean, the first year is kind of tough, but.
Right. Yeah, I think that we probably stick pretty close to this from year to year. It's the sewer system itself takes up quite a bit of time for the number of individuals. So just want to.
As it does for all of us.
Now I'm going to move on to financial administration, which is page 8 of 39. There's a reduction here of $7,867, which is a 5% reduction from 2016. One of the things that Andrew has done is had 25% of my time is now under the personnel administration budget. I'm doing a lot the last 2 years between the healthcare laws changing and many other things happening, changeover of staff, changes of other laws, federal laws. There's a lot more work to that than what there was 5 years ago. So we've adjusted some of that. We have added in here some grant, which is under professional services, line 13, some grant consulting, because they'll be involved in some of the financial part of this. Andrew had us go out and do an RFP and got a new contract for our audit, which is a drop. Roughly, our audit was costing us about $28,000 a year, and now it's $18,000 a year.
Karen, one time on the audit, a couple of years ago, you had requested I don't use the right word, enhanced audit or something, but something that had a little greater degree of certitude or whatever, and something that gave you a better comfort level, I guess. We've been doing that. Is that part of this, or?
It is part of this, and they're not charging us for that special work to do with grants. That's going to be included in your contract. They wanted to get our business. And all of the people that we approached, the companies that we approached, actually came in less than the current company that we had been using. So we had a few to pick from. And the person that works for this company actually used to work for the company that we were using. So it made it kind of nice because he knew some of our, rules and guidelines and contracts and
Nuances.
So it worked good for both of us. We have got an increase in our payroll processing. We do outsource our payroll. So our cost of our payroll normally runs us about $160 per payroll. So we get $26 a year. And then we have to pay for W-2 and W-3 processing. So, and there's always something more with that. We have the GASB 45 requirement every other year. Well, this is the year that we need to do it. This is this was a GASB rule that was put in place by Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
What does that mean? I don't know.
GASB is Governmental Accounting Standards Board, and they bring forth rules and regulations that we're supposed to follow. And it's part of coming up with what would we pay out if we had to pay any retirement benefits. We have retirees that are on our insurance plans, but we don't pay for them. But if something happened, what would we have to pay for if we had to come up with 3 months worth of insurance to cover that? Because we're getting the money from New Hampshire Retirement for their health insurance. New Hampshire Retirement's pulling it right out of their retirement monies and sending it to us. So if something happened there, we have to make sure that we're covered for a certain length of time. We don't have to budget for that cost, but we do have to budget for the ability to calculate that. So, assessing. This is down $17,714. And I don't have the percentage, didn't come up on that, so I'll have to tell you what that is in a minute. The town manager has gone out and done an RFP and got new assessing services. So we've got some reduction in cost in the assessing services. That's where our big savings is along this budget.
Now, on that though, there's two elements to that, right? One is whatever it's going to cost us this year, but also are we not trying to put some money aside for the 5-year? Is that in a different place?
No?
So there's 3 components. What I did was create a contract that had all 3 in it. So when they put the price in, it included the cyclical work, the general assessing services, and the reval in our 5th year. So it's all included in the price. With the last contractor, there were a lot of extras that were billed as well. They billed us for mileage and all kinds of extra work for working on the pilots and things like that. And what we did was work through all the different services that we wanted and make sure that it was an all-inclusive package, and they came in much more competitive. So.
Now, the next one we do in 5 years, though, that's going to have to be the one we just did. That was the interim one, or whatever you want to call it.
Like a
Right, but in 5 years, it's gonna have to be more of a hands-on.
So the way this is structured, and it doesn't seem like it was happening prior, is every year there's going to be a hands-on visit to a quarter of the properties in town. And so then by at the end of the fourth year, every property will have been visited, entered, and looked at.
Do you really believe that?
Windshields are.
Ask Eddie what he did to me. I mean, he did it, you know. My garage had been there for 40 years and had never been assessed. They sent the assessment up, says, but don't raise the tax. So you reduced my tax at by $9.
You got a $15 decrease.
No, now it's 75. But anyway, but then in 40 years, or almost 40 years, that garage had never been picked up.
Oh, that's great. Can we back taxes? Every
year.
No, it's been done now.
Yeah, what's the address there? No, but it should be.
It was all taken care of by Mr. Miller.
So every 4 years, a fourth of the population will be looked at, they'll go in and out of their houses.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and so then on the fifth year, we'll...
In the house?
They go in the house as well.
Okay, so every 5 years will be statistical unless something else changes.
I don't know, I was
Yeah,
just...
see, the DRA can
They
take a
don't
look at
do
our
that.
figures and say, kind of indicate whether we need like a full reval. But this really is a kind of in a way, a full reval. It's just that it's broken up in a period of 4 years. And, I think that there's we'll like what we see.
But you're saying that, we thought we heard you say they go in the home as well?
Yeah, the last company was supposed to as well, but I found out after the fact.
And they have the right to do that?
I bet there's nobody in this place that's
They
ever
have to
had
ask.
a tax assessor in their
Okay,
house.
it's the same deal.
Yeah, so if you don't let them in, they just assume that marble floors. And,
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
The chandeliers is made up
Yeah,
of
we have a lot of
24
those
gold.
in our house. Because I like dusting those little things.
Yeah, that's fine.
They're nice, yeah.
Who's that had a gold toilet?
Is there anybody in this room that's ever had a tax assessor in their house?
Yeah.
You have?
Yes, but I was in Lyman.
You have?
One came to my
In
house.
Lyman?
One came to my house years ago, and you know how polite I am. He didn't come in. I wasn't ready to have somebody in my house. I was home alone. Are you kidding me? I thought he was like selling something to do with religion. I said to packing, but
He probably was.
he might have been.
Dual purpose.
So the answer is just one, right? In Lyman.
In Lyman, yeah.
Well, yeah, from what I found out, it sounds like the last assessor may have kind of in his introduction said, "Oh, don't worry, I don't have to come in." So there
Yes.
may have been a lot of
Yes.
that.
Although in today's day and age, I mean, how many people are actually home?
During the day.
I mean, like, the Girl Scouts used to go around and sell Girl Scout cookies. When you knock on the door, is anybody there to answer the door anymore? I mean, it's, your kids are at YMCA or Girls and Boys Club or whatever. I mean, it's pretty tough. I mean, between 8 and 5,
I
the
don't know how many
percentage.
the census people get, when they go knock on doors. You wonder how accurate the statistics are.
Yeah.
Well, like maybe just showing up without an appointment or letting them know you're coming, or it's baloney.
Yeah, definitely.
And I realize that's time consuming.
I know we have gotten letters in other communities, saying that we've been engaged by the town of blank, and we'd like to come by on, October 17th or whatever,
Right.
in the morning or whatever. Would you?
And that's helpful. I mean, especially if you live where we do. It's a little unsettling if somebody comes to your door if you're not expecting them.
Yeah.
But there again, but if husband and wife are both at work and the kids are at school, what are you gonna do?
Moving on, we left legal the same.
Good for you, Karen.
Personnel administration, this budget increased from 2016, $36,962. It's a 38% increase. One area of increase was the merit hire and comparable wage adjustment on the very top line, line 1. We had only 2,000 in the 2016 approved budget, and it's been bumped to 5,000. And then these other lines that are down through that say TMADJ, Those are the wage lines where 25% of my wages and benefits are added in here. So,
We're just moving from one category to another.
yes. No, none of the other numbers, other than workers' comp, there is an increase there. It's estimated at 10%, maybe less, it may be more. It's estimated at this time at 10%.
Is that based on experience in terms of accidents?
They go back 6 years and look at all of our claims, and that is part of the basic of the percentage of increase. Now, it may go down, but I don't know until usually around the 20th of November for this number. I push them. Sometimes I can get it the 1st of November, but at this point, I don't expect it till the 20th.
We're hoping that they're, going to be very safe, and hopefully the claims that are in there will be cycling out of that 6-year look back soon. We have trainings and things with Primex to help us in that.
Excuse me, hey Carol, you can go back on legal expense, please, because I'm I think you jumped.
Yeah, I'm back at legal expense 39.
Yeah.
We had budgeted $97,600, 2016, and we kept the budget at $97,600. We haven't made any changes in that budget at this time.
And even though our year-to-date, I mean, we're expecting by the end of the year other stuff will have occurred.
At this point,
Negotiations.
we never know what's going to happen. Negotiations are going on. If the union contract, one or both, get voted down, we'll have those next year. So we've kept it the same. You never know what is going to happen.
We will continue with certain utility cases, and we'll likely have that again next year.
So at the end of the meeting, maybe we can have an update about the dam if there's any more information.
So general buildings, which is page 11 of 39. This is a difference of $790, a 1% difference between the town managers and the 2016 adjusted budget. We have an increase in the SNS contracted services. We have taken out a one-time expenditure on a new web page. We have added a line in here. Actually, we increased the various upgrades to various buildings on line 7 by $1,000. So those are the changes within the budget. Planning and zoning. We have a difference between the town manager's budget and last year's budget of $691. It's less than a percent increase. It's 0.81%. You've got your New Hampshire retirement adjustments in here. The town manager did reduce the planning and zoning legal down. We have increased the wages slightly in this and hours because we have increased demand and some development and research that needs to be done. Whenever someone's planning to build or doing some zoning improvements or zoning changes, there's more hours now. Cemeteries, that is the 1,500, and that's on page 13 of 39. 1,500, they increase their budget by every year. It's about a 2% increase from last year. Under town insurance, we have a large increase here. This year, we had to go out and find new property liability insurers. And we solicited several different entities, agencies, to get a quote. We only got one quote, one place to insure us. We have high claims. in our property liability.
Why?
Many different, we've had vehicle, cruises that got totaled. We had a truck rollover. We've had a couple employment issues that had to be
Adjudicated?
yeah, settled or adjudicated or had to be looked into. So we had to go back. They went back 5 years and looked at all our claims, assessed it. The increase this year, because I had budgeted last year a slight increase, we ended up with a $30,000 increase in our property liability insurance this year. So I factored in 2016's cost plus 10%. I won't have the number until later on this, what this is going to be, but I'm hoping some of the efforts we're trying to do to reduce some of the cost will help, but it may not be seen for a year or two.
Managerial oversight.
Yes.
And what, we have some type of deductible on this?
$1,000 deductible. If you look at that line 3 on this page, the deductible is in here at $5,000.
Is it
So far
1,000?
to date, we've spent $1,459. Most of our claims for vehicle accidents were last year. So it hit us the prior year, 2015.
But it catches up for this year.
Yes.
So is it $1,000 per incident?
Incident. And sometimes we can recoup that if it was somebody that hit us or there's other circumstances involved. We can sometimes recoup some of that. Moving equipment from one vehicle to another, those costs can be covered by the insurance company. We may end up going out and finding something less expensive than what we had, or we may end up doing some of the repairs ourselves, which save us some money. So there's efforts always there trying to figure out how we can.
But only one company would quote.
One company, that's it.
They do, I think they do all the municipalities except for maybe one.
They got all the municipalities in this area except for one.
Yeah. And we are making changes to help reduce our liability exposure, and hopefully over the next few years we'll see that move in the right direction.
Advertising and association, there's no changes there. And other government, that includes the community center and the airport, there are no changes in that budget whatsoever.
Now, on the airport is the biggest side, but there's been a change in the airport now as far as management, oversight, structure. So they're going to be...
They want to come in and talk with budget committee.
Now what did we leave it at 5,000 last year?
6,000.
3.
Six.
And
Six.
it raised 6. And he dropped it to 5 this year?
No, it's
No,
not.
I have it still at 6.
Okay.
We need to meet
So
with them
they-
and kind of hear out what their request is. We haven't done that
And I
They're
want
really
to
trying-
get for that Black Hawk helicopter.
They wanted 10 or something.
Huh?
I've invited our representative, who I've never met. His name is Jim Mason. He's the representative from Littleton to the commission. I've invited him to come to our meeting on October 20, the last one of the month, whatever date that is, because he was asking for something from the board back in May, identifying him as the Littleton representative. Without sounding critical, he's a little loosey-goosey here because none of us know him as far as
Oh, but he was here last year.
Yeah.
yeah, well, we've never talked to him as a select board, so he's coming, he's been invited, I haven't seen an acknowledgement yet, to come to our October meeting. There is some concern out there that this National Guard program is not moving forward. It's been sitting there in limbo with the commission for some months now. And you may remember a contingency that we placed on giving the money, because we took the money out at one point, is that this program would be going forward, or they brought that to us as a way to, in fact, defer asking towns for money by having a program there. It's been some months now since the commission voted, or the board of, I'm sorry, maybe it was the select board in Whitefield voted to have this, and it went to the commission for final approval, and it hasn't happened yet. So we would like to talk to him about our collective thinking about that program, the National Guard program, and his representation back to the commission.
And he was a gentleman from Horizon Engineering.
I don't
That was
remember.
Andy Nadeau.
Okay.
Yeah, he gave a presentation, and then the Littleton representative was there.
Thank you.
I think this was the guy sitting to his left.
Well, we've had I remember last year we did, is the airport really beneficial to Littleton? And there's a lot of ways to say no, it isn't, but there's also a lot of ways to say yes, it is. And I think next was Lebanon, and that's it in the North Country.
I think the main question last year was, should it be based on user fees, those that are
Well, I
using
agree
it?
with that too, Diane.
So that was, I think, one of the main
Was
points.
the conversation.
Yeah.
And also the fact that basically they could not give us a good sense of how much use was going on, and
No.
they really didn't have any figures, which I think they're.
Is that airport manned all the time?
I
Or
don't
do you
think
have
that was
to
on it.
contact it and somebody runs out there and wow, they.
No, that older guy that was retired sounded like he darn near lived out there. He was free. I mean, he volunteered 7 days a week, and
I think if we do have him come in and speak with us, if everyone could get the questions to him prior to that, so he could get the information, then how much usage is it? It's really hard to be sitting here and not having the information accessible.
Well,
So
you
if we
think
can get
you would
that
have some
off the top of,
statistics,
yes.
so-
it needs to be
Yeah,
proven
that's
whether
what
it's a
it
real
needs.
necessity.
I know, but let's give him a chance.
You're nice.
I think there'll be a more coherent presentation this year.
I'm going to move on to the police department.
Boo.
And I'm going actually to page 17 just so you can see the differences in the total. So on page 17 of 39, the difference between the town manager budget and the adjusted police department budget is $59,467. That's a 3.93% increase from last year. Now, part of that increase has to do with, of course, we've got a new officer in here that is now for the full year, not just part of the year. We also have adjusted, this was a recent adjustment, moving the office assistant that was in the parking meters back into the police department budget. But we put the administrative positions in number 2, line number 2. This used to be like part-time positions. So on page 14 of 39, so you're going to go back to the beginning of the police department. So we moved all the wages for the office assistant that was in parking meters back to the police department. We moved the admin assistant down to administrative assistant that was in the upper part of the budget to the admin portion of the budget. We no longer have a, excuse me,
Where's the
that's page,
Gotcha, I'm with you,
yeah, number 2.
thank you.
Then we go to number 3, the grant-funded officer. That grant has been expired. It expired in August of 2016. So we no longer have a portion of the person's wages. They are now fully included up above. Part-time officer. We have a part-time officer that's working 25 to 30 hours a week. That was one of our full-time officers that has retired. And we have added in here a part-time unsworn evidence technician. So that's something new. It's just very part-time.
That's the $5,000.
Yes.
And what would that be for? Can you explain?
I'm going to turn that question over to the
Okay.
chief.
Whenever. I mean,
I didn't hear what you said.
for the new position for the part-time unsworn evidence technician, can you explain what that is?
That individual would do all the evidence handling in the evidence room, cataloging. We're behind on our audits, transport evidence to Concord, probably tighten up our chain of custody issues. It's a technical position, just as far as packaging and making sure the evidence within the department's handled properly.
Then,
When we talk about part-time officer, is this a retired officer?
the retired officer is not getting any retirement benefits in this budget.
And
He's
how
getting
many,
his benefits.
The only thing
retired,
that the part-time officer would get is whatever benefits would be applied to a 25 to 30
Right.
hour a week position.
okay, well, what's the maximum amount of hours a retired police officer can work without affecting?
The retirement.
34 hours a week. If they work over that, they could forfeit their New Hampshire retirement system.
You had that deal down in Belknap County 3 or 4 years ago, $250,000 each one of them. I think they're paying back $25 a week.
And what?
It was a settlement, but anyway, so, but obviously the question at that time, I think that was Belknap County Sheriff's Department, and the question was, well, how did you guys not know that these retired officers were, retired?
Well, it's a non-issue. We monitor his hours. He doesn't exceed the hours.
I know, but that was part of that discussion, Bob. I mean, if a agency in New Hampshire is employing a retired officer who worked in New Hampshire, they've got to know that the person can't work more than X number of hours a week.
Unless they work for multiple agencies.
That's right.
Well, no, I think they can work multiple agencies and exceed that amount, because there was another police officer in the southern part of the state who was actually suing the state. He was working in 2 different police departments, but because he was working, he wasn't able to get time and a half, and he was suing the state because he didn't feel that.
That's not an
But it's a
issue.
non-issue here,
That's
Paul.
not an issue here.
It's not an issue. You
He's
know
not going
what's
to
up.
exceed, and we monitor his hours.
Yeah.
So what are the benefits that he does receive?
He could get a buyout on the health insurance if he didn't take the health insurance.
Which he's not.
So he could get
So he's getting
$3,000,
the health insurance portion.
the
No.
$3,000 buyout.
Oh, just the
No,
buyout?
he's not taking insurance, so he is getting the buyout.
Right.
So
Well,
is that wrong?
$3,000 flat fee one time.
Well, it's paid out bi-weekly.
I understand.
So if he does leave, we're not at the full
Right.
3,000.
But that's $3,000 annually,
Yes.
and so next year it would kick in again.
So we did have a part-time officer that retired, officer that retired, and there's an open position now, which we have budgeted above, but this gentleman is actually leaving us and may just fill in occasionally once in a while, once this person gets through their schooling for their other occupation they're going to. So we're going to be losing this person. Then we've reduced the part-time officers down to 10,000 here. And those might be 2 or 3 officers that we have out there that are certified that can be called in as needed. No benefits whatsoever.
Hourly pay.
Then we have overtime, no changes there. Travel reimbursements the same. Basically, the health insurance has changed. I have missed one plan, so I had to add that in, and that went into the default, the proposed, and the town manager's budget. I'm on line 7.
Page 15 is,
Now I'm going to move forward to page 15. We've got an adjustment in the New Hampshire retirement system. Under training, there is one item that's been zeroed out. It was a one-time cost. And that is in the town manager's budget. It's taken out of there as well. If you look down under 14 on this page 15 and 39, and I haven't numbered it yet, but there's professional services, and this is that grant person hopefully helping us get some police department grants, and we budgeted $2,000 in there for that. Under telephone communications, we found that we had missed the cop sync amount, so we had to add that in to all of the different budgets that should have been in.
The what again?
It's called Cop Sync, Brandon Cop Sync. And I'll have to ask the chief to explain it further, but $600.
We paid our bill last year, but we didn't have a line for it. But it's an emergency notification system, so somebody can activate it in school if there's an active shooter, and it notifies all the police officers and all the individuals in the school district that there's an incident going on in the school. So the officers get it on their phones, they get it on their MDTs, and all the people within the school get it on their monitors. The school pays their portion, we pay our portion.
And have this, do you know if the school employees have been trained thus far?
Yes.
They have?
Yes.
So in data processing, we have an increase there under the IMC maintenance. That contract has increased. Under medical services, we have adjusted it down. Under facilities maintenance, there is added it's $550 for some repairs on the sprinkler system. We did add in for seal coating because that has to be done every 3 years. And I'm trying to make sure there wasn't anything else I had to add it in there. But down through the other items that have changed are noted in here. We're going back to page 17. There's a small decrease in some office supplies, decrease in equipment repair, decrease in gasoline. There's a new program the chief's been using, which is saving on some gasoline. Under books and periodicals, there's some small changes. Under rentals and leases, there's some added things for a record storage, a mobile mini, a media server is added in here. We have equipment purchased. Under that, we have Motorola's batteries for the radar system. We've got some increase in cost. One thing the town manager took out is the firearm sound suppressor that was included in the department's budget.
Firearms depressor. Okay, sounds ominous.
Silencer.
Silencer. All right.
So I'm going to move on to page 18 of 39. Under dispatch, we calculated a 2% increase. We do not have that budget from Grafton County, so I'm not sure what that's going to end up being, but we've added in a factor. The difference between 2016 and the town manager's budget is $3,747. It ends up being a 1.98% increase. The ambulance, that contract was reviewed and a new one was approved. The increase from 2016 to the town manager's budget is $5,113. That's a 4.51% increase. We are getting $3,000 a year rental from them.
to offset, and then,
In addition, they also are billed for any dispatch charges. I think it comes last year, it might be about $6,000 because they also serve, I think, Sugar Hill and some of the other surrounding communities. And so we bill them back for that usage that's coming under our dispatch. And then we charge them also for various items that they use at the department.
I think one of the main questions last year that we had was, this provides one ambulance, correct? So, and that hasn't changed, correct?
There is supposed to be a backup ambulance if the ambulance is out.
So the backup ambulance is really supplied if an ambulance is down. So it's not that there is 2 ambulances provided to the community. And,
Backup is if the real ambulance is broken.
mm-hmm. And so what we went over call volume and tried to see how many instances there were where a backup ambulance would have been needed. And there's not a high demand for it. And they've created a system where they have ambulances within range that when there's one moved out of the area, they can move another one within a response zone. So I think we have pretty good coverage. We also have, firefighters that are highly trained, and our police officers are also highly trained, and they all respond to incidents. So something that we had been looking at is how to develop a system that will replace what was provided by the hospital before, which was kind of like a emergency response without an ambulance. I forget what the term is called, but you deliver a paramedic to the scene, and then you can get an ambulance there after, or deliver them to the surrounding community's ambulance. That might be trained, have staff that's trained at a lower level.
So, these second ambulance, if you would, has been an issue, if you would, in the discussions with Ross previously, because they did have 2 ambulances. So now we have 1 ambulance that's here, but you're saying if this one ambulance is out on a call, if you would, if there was a second call that came in, they would actually dispatch an ambulance from a different location to come cover that same.
They could probably give you the plan in detail, but so for example, if our ambulance is out at a call, they may have an ambulance from St. J that moves within response range. Maybe they don't come into Littleton, but they might sit and wait for the return of the other ambulance. Yeah. There's a term for that, which I'm sure they can.
No, I know, and they do that in larger communities.
We had a 9/11 call at the hospital. Okay, somebody fell outside. And Bethlehem, some other, I don't remember what town it was, ambulance was there, and they took care of the call. 911 had called them and said they were on the property anyway.
Yeah, but they do. My son Shay worked for a while down in Louisiana on it, and they would actually put them out on the interstate on a median, if you would, depending on. Yeah, there was a larger, it was a larger entity, but based on what was going on, you might be sitting on a median on the interstate at such a spot, but that based on 2 other things happening, they may move you to another spot that's more central to the potential next incident, I guess, if you would, readiness, just so that.
But we don't have that.
No, but that's what you're saying, is that with what they're doing on the other side of the river, that they may reposition over there, just in case there was really something that they have to come to here.
Well, it's also a $600 call for them to come here and pick you up and take you to the hospital.
I know, it isn't cheap, but I think the reason why we were talking about last year is that wasn't it, the hospital did provide ambulance service, but then they no longer provided it. So then the question came up, do we have a second ambulance?
Right.
And you're finding out that the other areas can provide that service. It's coordinated.
Yeah, from what we see, we could pay for another ambulance, but it looks like the demand is not.
How many times was there a need for 2 ambulances? Is that, do you know?
Yeah, it was pretty small when we looked at it. It was able to serve. It's all about response time, and you can get to somebody that's in need within an amount of time.
But that was the big question. You researched it, and thank you for doing that.
Some of the other things that we did look at too is, are there times when the ambulance goes out and it doesn't need to? Like For example, if the police are the first on the scene, can they make the call whether or not there's a medical, rather than just saying, you know what, we gotta have the medical arrive here with the paramedic on board. So
The other thing you want to keep in mind, Andrew, is that, Lancaster has a very, very active ambulance corps. And, and they've approached it in a bit of a different way. But, if someday we ever had to revisit the situation or it needs to be rethought, it certainly would be worth having a conversation with them. That they may be able to actually provide coverage themselves. So, just
that's good.
an FYI, I mean, they, for a small community, they've got, I think they have 3 or 4 ambulances. And they do a huge amount of transporting. I don't get into all the details in terms of how they compensate their people, but, they may actually be a viable provider themselves.
So,
These are things
yes,
we
we need to move on.
Right now, we're talking about a $5,000 increase, give or take.
Right, but there's revenues also built in that weren't there.
And
before,
some
so-
better revenues, a couple you said, okay, thank you.
I'm going to page 22 of 39, again, starting out with the end figure, moving my way back there after we get done. This is the fire department. The town manager has an adjusted budget that's less than last year by $15,369, and it's a 1% reduction from last year's budget. Now I'm going to go back to page 19 of 39. The wage line I just would like to note is actually less than last year. So if you look at line 1 right across, you'll see the wage line has reduced. And that is because we have different staff for a lot of positions that were at the fire department that's full-time. We are all filled with full-time staff. We have a captain on board now. Looking forward to a lot better year. The overtime is kept at the same rate. We did change on line 2, where it used to say part-time temporary position, we changed it to part-time position call company.
Karen, I have a question about the overtime.
Okay.
Through 71% of this year, the fire department has expended 101% of their budget, the 46,022.
Yes.
So, is there a reason why we're flatlining the overtime?
Well, we were at one point down 1 or 2 individuals in the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the full-time staff filled in those positions. We also had call company working off and on, filling in some of those positions, and at some weeks, they may have worked over 40 hours, which meant that they went into overtime, and it had to be paid out of overtime.
Okay.
So, call company shift coverage, that is staying the same. It is high for year to date. That's line 3, and that's because we did use call company to cover shifts when we were down some employees. We have mileage reimbursement. We have a slight increase in miscellaneous and travel to training because we do have some new staff there. We do have to get them some additional training. Health insurance is actually down, and it's because of the change of plans. So that's line 6. All of the other lines that go along with pay 7, 8, 9, and 10, of course, just. Line 11 is the retirement. And there is a slight increase over 2016's because of the rate increase. Training expense, you can see the notes of what changes have happened there on the training expense. We have removed the paramedic training that we had put in here last year It was offered out as training for our full-time firefighters, and none of them have taken advantage of it. So
And none of them are taking advantage of it. Okay.
we do have one paramedic on board at this time in the fire department. Under data processing, we do have a contract increase. We have added the line, which I did not number. That's between 16 and 17, and that's for the professional services for grant administration. And that's in the town manager budget of $2,000. We have an adjustment in the heating fuel, and what we did was a couple of pages from this was a line that said propane, and we moved that into heating fuel. So that's going to be part of heating fuel. We've adjusted the line for water up $100, and we increased the sewer line slightly. We've added in on line 34 general small maintenance items, and that's with the person that we've got as our building coordinator and kind of monitoring our buildings and doing little bits of repair. We added $1,000 for him. On page 21 of 39, we've added some under, we've got it twice, I guess we'll have to take it out. We've got 1,000 in there twice for building repair. So line between 37 and 38, I'll have to remove
You got
that.
23, yeah, it says 23 right there.
Yeah. Janitorial supplies, the dumpster contract did increase, so that had to be changed. And if you go down to where it says gas, propane, and oil, that's where it says line 103 and 104. We moved that to heating. It was $840.
And do we have a heating oil contract or bid for?
I'm working on it. Right now we got a number of $1.66 per gallon. So we may not be needing what has happened. This is for heating oil. What has happened, the school went out, they got their bid and never included us. So we're going out on our own and having to bid. See, the last couple of years, I done the bid and had to go out, coordinate. We're supposed to alternate off and on, and it ended up going out, and we were never included.
Okay, but the school has a bid at what figure?
1.59, but they got that in August.
Okay.
And you're at what,
1.66.
Okay. But it's not as simple as just calling the successful bidder for the school and saying we would like to add this on?
Hindsight now, yeah.
No, I mean, they,
No,
I meant for the provider, is it's that many more months in
once they've
advance.
settled on
yeah.
an amount for a certain number of
Yeah.
gallons, they're
That's it.
probably not gonna add additional gallons for that same price.
right, but worth asking the question though.
I put it out there. I
I'm
haven't
sure
gotten
she
names
did.
back.
Okay, 'cause you know what I'm saying, depending on
Yeah.
how the market has moved, and I know you're obviously much.
I have no oil anymore in my.
No, I know, but you spend enough time in that industry, but yes, it's certainly not worth asking, I certainly would ask the question because.
Do you have pellets?
So I'm going to go on to page 22, and I don't believe there's a lot of changes there other than under books and periodicals. So that's it for the fire department.
I have a question. So earlier we were talking about the first responders are usually the police department, and then they would also let the ambulance providers know whether or not they are needed. Do we do the same thing for the fire department? I know that they go out on many of the calls.
I want to clarify that. We're not the first responders to medical
Well,
calls.
I'm sorry.
We only will respond if we're available and not tied up on our calls. And primarily, or most of the time, we're busy doing something else, unless it's a high incident like they call a Delta or an echo call. We generally don't respond to the medical calls.
I didn't really mean that. I meant like sometimes, I think Andrew had said that sometimes you would let the ambulance know if they were
Right.
needed or not needed.
We
In those situations, we do have calls for car accidents and things like that. The fire department goes out on those as well.
We don't dictate protocol of fire and EMS. We just notify them of the situation. They make the determination whether they're going to still respond or not.
Okay. I was just,
So yeah, like at Grafton County Dispatch, I think it's called like call cards or something.
They have their
So
protocols.
the dispatch will have the protocol on how it's supposed to work, and that's one of the things that we were working on with fire and EMS and the surrounding communities was the protocol. If someone shows up, who should be involved and who can be turned back.
so you're working on those protocols.
But there's almost always two. I mean, working info booth, there's always the fire department and the ambulance go at the same time, and then sometimes the police.
Yeah, in a lot
I
of
mean, you
cases,
never know how bad. I don't know how bad it is or what's really going on. I just see it.
We'll give them information that'll help them determine whether they need to still respond or not, but that's their call, not ours. So we could tell them there's no leakage or there's no injury, and then they could turn around, because when dispatch gets the call initially, they need up-to-date confirmed information. So, and a lot of times what they're getting from the caller could be inaccurate. So
Right.
sometimes they'll provide the fire and EMS with new information, they might not respond. I still don't know why they respond to the hospital
Yeah.
with an ambulance. That's the million-dollar question.
I'll tell you why, because of legality.
That's the million-dollar question. But
And I agree with you totally, Paul. But it's
I'm sorry if I misstated that, but I was just trying to figure out the protocol on that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's fair. And sometimes, like I said, we might be busy on another call. We can't give them those updates.
But if there's an automobile accident, Paul, aren't you guys the first ones there? Isn't that your
Most
primary?
of the time, depending on where we are.
That's your primary. You're gonna have an automobile accident that the fire department goes to that you don't go to.
I hope not.
That's what I mean. So
That's,
I-
that's,
Right.
yeah.
So we'll give them a size up when we get there, and they make a determination based on that information whether they're still going to respond.
Excuse me, who enforces these protocols? The town? Your boss? Who enforces this protocol that you don't have to go? The police doesn't have to go?
I don't
Oh,
enforce.
he's not saying that.
What's that?
I don't think he's saying that.
He said that, that's what he said.
Mr. Chairman, what we do is we provide information to dispatch, and they relay it to fire and EMS.
Okay.
And based on their protocols, they might continue to the call, they might redirect to another call, depending on the situation.
And the protocols are established
By
Grafton
County.
by Grafton County.
Right.
No.
The fire
No.
chief.
Fire
The
chief,
fi-
yeah.
The fire chief.
Fire and EMS.
And they have a group of fire chiefs who get together, and I forget what the name of that group is.
Well, Twin State,
Twin State, yeah.
I don't want to
So
speak
they
for the
get
fire
together,
chief.
They meet, they vote, they relay dispatch. Yeah.
If they are not available, the poor guy's gonna die, right?
Nobody's gonna.
Nobody's gonna die.
Paul, if you get to an accident and nobody's injured, no, cars are pretty beat up, nobody's injured,
Corruption.
you are not obliged to call anybody else, you just take the accident report and call it a day, is that the
We'll
deal?
provide that information to dispatch. If it might be, if the vehicle, it might not be any injury, but it might have heavy damage.
Right,
Depending on certain fire protocols, they still might respond.
okay, I see. But if you see that it's not heavily damaged, I mean, of course you hit a bumper today and it's heavily damaged no matter what, but if nobody is injured and the damage looks like the car can still run and all that's safe, off they go after you take everybody's information?
He relays it back.
He relays it back and
Yeah.
then you decide. Okay.
Okay.
Always seems that there's a fire truck there no matter what.
That's all, I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
Page 23 of 39, Public Works Administration. This is, and you look at the bottom number on the right-hand side, it's minus $9,165. It's a 9% reduction. And most of that reduction has to do with, town manager has adjusted the amount from the sewer funds. The new public works administrator or director is involved heavily with the sewer department and working on sewer items. He does have some qualifications that we didn't have before that relate to sewer. So that's been helpful.
And I think it's probably accurate to say that the last director also was involved quite a bit with sewer, and there was a percentage of the pay that came from there, but we've raised it more accurately with the amount of time. We're working under USDA grants and quite a bit with engineers and trying to plan out sewer infrastructure upgrades to be able to map them at the same time as road improvements so that we can all working the road up and get the working infrastructure. And doing a lot more inspection of the lines, like TV lines, to see where issues are likely at. Yeah, just quite a bit of activity with that. Also, we're actually starting to enforce our ordinances. So like our sewer ordinance, for example, is now being enforced. And we have a case right now that's headed to be adjudicated, and that takes quite a bit of time preparing. And the police department is, the departments are collaborating together to try to keep our community within
Will the net of all this, though, could this end up resulting in an increase in sewer user fees because of this?
I think in the long run you'll see a reduction because it's a little more proactive. For example, one of the issues that we have is grease in sewer lines, and so if we enforce the ordinance ahead of the game, we won't end up in a situation where maybe we're at midnight calling in hard again, or some company to come and do an emergency clean out of a sewer piece of infrastructure. And so, we're finding issues all around the community, and just taking them, working with property owners, and we find that most are willing to work with us. And right now we have 9 of us up. We're moving forward with that.
When we get to the sewer budget, you're going to see between 2016 and 2017, the town manager's budget, that's about a 5% increase. Now, some of that is attributed to the $900,000 loan that we took, that 1/3 of it is sewer related. So.
And there's a component of that budget too that's still in flux, which is a large portion of it. We're trying to go through all contracts that we have, the ones that are expiring, which it seems like quite a few are, and putting them out to bid. And one of them is the sewer operations budget, but we can go over that when we get there. And hopefully we'll see a nice savings.
Okay, I'm going to continue on. On the Public Works, line 8, we have increased because we do have a new employee in there in that position. This is Public Works, which is 2339. There is a slight increase on the training line. We've also included grant admin for grants of $2,000. So maybe we can get some road grants to help with road construction, future road construction.
For the grant writer administrator, how much total? Yeah.
Total income that we believe we're going to get through the grant administration should just about offset. We have about a total of $30,000 in expenditures in the budget.
For that
We have
position.
$20,000 we believe is going to come back that will cover the grant administration costs, but that doesn't include the additional things that she might be able to go out and get for us,
Okay.
which could include the administration costs.
I'm just asking because sometimes when you divvy it up between the different departments, you lose track of how much the total is. So.
And we thought you'd have that question.
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm going to move on to the highway department. And I'm going to the last page of this, which is 26 of 39. There's an increase In the town manager's budget of $38,628, it's a 4% increase over 2016's budget. Most of that is made up of, under line 1 on page 24, back to the beginning, we've added in for a truck driver. This department was cut down by 3 employees when we had the big budget cut. It has not asked for another person to get more people to work throughout the town and try to.
I think they did last year, but
It got cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've added in for 9 months for a truck driver in this budget. Under line 2, under the temporary positions, we've added in for 1 more part-time person during the summer, because there's a lot more activity happening during the summer on repairs, regular maintenance of roads, not just plowing the roads during the summer months. We also, of course, have people that go out on vacation and so on that we have to cover. Under health insurance, we have added for 8 months for that full-time person that we added above. And that also reflects all the way down in all of the other wage-related and benefit-related expenditures. We do have New Hampshire retirement system that had to be adjusted, that 0.17 adjustment. And then if you go a little further down on page 25, you're going to see that heating fuel has now been changed to propane. And because this is a new building, we have lowered that figure, believing it's going to be more efficient.
And propane is the backup for the building.
Yes, in the highway department. We have increased the sewer more or less to reflect what we're currently paying for. I believe it was reduced when we weren't going to be using. The building wasn't going to be there for 1 year, and we never bumped it back up. Because we had dropped it to $150, and we've expended $474 already. If you go a little further down, under general supplies construction, there's been an increase of about $1,300, and that's through most of the budget, basically for retaining wall repairs, sidewalk repairs, and concrete. Under line 26, which is on page 26 of 39, there's been a decrease in the gasoline and the diesel fuel. We're planning on having the highway department switch over to the same program that the police department's on in order to get a reduction on the fuel.
Is that a state program? Is that how that works?
This is actually a different program than the state, yes. Then we believe there's going to be a reduction in sand and gravel.
Really?
Right now, we're fully stocked with sand and gravel. It was a lighter year last year.
Reduction, the cost hasn't gone down, just we
No.
haven't used as much. Okay.
We're fully stocked for, hopefully the winter won't start till December
Next
25th.
week.
Right.
Wait a minute, some of us won't leave it before then.
Yes, we do. Yes,
So
we
that's
do.
it on the changes of this budget.
All right.
So the majority of the increases have to do with adding that full-time position, reductions throughout, and adding a part-time position. Bridges, sidewalks, street lighting, and animal control, nothing has changed within these budgets. They're all the same. That's page 27, 39. Welfare is on page 28 of 39. The number on the bottom has not changed. It's some adjustments within the budget because of current year usage. On page 29 of 39, we have patriotic purposes. We've increased the cost of the flags, and also we've added $1,000 for changing the flags on the streets so that as they need to be replaced, we could replace
The
them.
town pays for that?
We are hoping to include it in our budget this year.
Okay.
You mean the Pollyanna or the regular flags?
The regular.
American
Yeah,
flag.
American flags.
I know they common sense did a thing where they were trying to get the scouts to clean. They found out they look like they're faded, and they're really not that faded, and they can be cleaned, washed and cleaned. Where did that go?
Yeah, I think they did wash them. I remember Molly talking about that. Yeah, but we have to check. I
Okay.
think she was
Well, as long as they look fresh, that's
Yeah.
all that matters.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
American flags.
Very
Very important.
primary.
All right.
Now I'm going on to transfer station, and I'm actually going to page 31 of 39, always at the end, and then I'll back up. The difference between the town manager proposed budget and the 2016 is $4,119. It's a 1.11% increase. The revenues, we've reviewed the revenues with the transfer station manager, and it's believed the revenues are going to be increased from last year. Not a huge amount, but they are going to be increased. These figures on the year to date are up to September 22nd, and it looks like he's going to make or be above what he had budgeted. We've got some changes in the town manager budget to the number of hours the part-time employee is working. We're going to be reducing that to 16. There's more efficiency within the transfer station than what there was before. There's some things that they've eliminated or combined that are some time-saving efforts. We also have a reduction in health insurance. We've increased overtime because if we're cutting back in one area, we may need somebody to pick up a few things in another area, so the overtime's been increased. And if you look at the overtime, we did have $1,183 in overtime this year. We had somebody out for 3 months that was a full-time employee who was out. You go down through Social Security, Medicare is reduced. We have adjusted the New Hampshire retirement system. Workers' comp has an increase in here. We are required to do ash testing every other year. This is a year that we need to pick that up. So that's included in, added to the default in the proposed budgets. Under building maintenance, we have a slight increase in some of these lines. We've also added for our building coordinator to do some repairs down there. Rather than outsourcing some of the repairs to people that can charge $25 or $30 an hour, we have our own person that's less. And that's line 19 on this page 31. And you go down a little further, you're going to see that the town manager has removed the items that were rather large in here that was in the original proposal to be placed out on warrant articles. We're going to try to get some of them done if we can this year, and we have the money to do them, but some items are going to have to go on warrant articles.
Why?
Some, because one is $75,000, and we do not have the money to buy that one item, which is a new
Karen,
building.
Warrant articles are driving me nuts. We got 13 on here, we had 43 last year. Before we get through, we'll have 50 in this year's. I mean, someplace we've got to stop, but I'm not sure any town equipment, the police car, any of it, should be put on warrant articles.
Well, the budget committee can make that recommendation to the selectmen.
Now this fights Diane, what she's trying to keep her increase up to, but, and I agree with her too, but this warrant article thing,
Not necessarily. I think we're still on the same page.
the warrant article thing is just driving, it's crazy.
Because my thing is the operating budget and the warrant articles together, whatever it is, to kind of keep it in control. I don't care if it's in the budget, operating budget, or if it's on a warrant article.
Yeah, but the warrant, I don't know.
Yeah.
The warrant article gets to the point you gotta read a damn book to get through it. I mean, that's,
But this is not a piddly little item. This is not a piddly little item.
$75,000.
$75,000.
no, I agree with that. I agree with that. And it, because it's on a warrant article, that much money, I bet you 10 to 1 it won't pass.
I don't know. I mean,
Be very
but anyways,
The bigger issue that has happened is because revenues have been off significantly. Historically, the department would have accumulated funds that either would have paid for that or would have paid for a good chunk of it, but because revenues have been off for several years in a row, plus also they contributed to some tax offsets a few years ago, that they don't have much left in reserves, right? That's
we don't have a lot in reserves, and I think one of the things that, I don't know if you have the information or if you need to go further into your budget, but a couple of things, our tax rate is gonna be set, right? Is it gonna be in November
It
this year?
hasn't, it probably will be. I can't guarantee when it will happen. I know that DRA has some paperwork they need to approve before it moves forward.
So do you know of, I think right now, to offset, I think, I don't know what the term is with the hospital, the settlement with the hospital, the overlay, that $500,000, would that be an added expense at the time of the tax setting?
Yes.
So we have to raise and appropriate an additional $500,000, whatever that amount is.
Last year it was $250,000.
$250,000. So this year will be, okay. Have you any word from the school on what, okay, we don't have that information.
No, we do.
Do we?
Oh, yeah, Tom gave that to us last time.
What was that?
A little over 500,000,
Yeah.
which is good, but it's less than the 722 or whatever in the previous year, so. Just in the rough calculating we did the last time between the, I shouldn't say shortfall, we don't wanna, I mean, the school did obviously a good job, but it still didn't, it didn't equal the previous year. But you take that and you take what we're looking at in setting the tax rate on the overall situation, and certainly a dollar on the tax rate is not going to be unrealistic.
I can't say until I get
We don't have any
everything
information
calculated,
on that.
and I don't want to be held to a number.
Karen,
I'm being honest.
we never hold you to a number, Karen, only to a
Karen,
neighborhood.
back to those big items, the $75,000 or $50,000. Are any of those items that obviously it's a huge amount of money that lasts for a period of time. Are those items that can also be leased that you end up owning at the very end?
I'm going to try my best to do that.
Okay.
If we can do that, it levels out the cost, so it's not hitting all at once.
Yeah, because that is a lot of money.
The 75,000 is a good sized chunk, but I like to level those out over 3 years if possible.
It's a $50,000 one, it's a lot of money.
I just think with any warrant articles we got, going back to this, it makes them very secondary. I mean, the selectmen don't want them, the budget committee doesn't want them, so why are they giving us to vote for? And the police car is probably is a necessity, and there's a lot of things on this that are necessities that are being dumped off to warrant articles right off the bat.
Well, I think that the selectmen and the budget committee have supported a lot of the warrant articles. I think they have monitored an amount, but for the most part, we've supported a lot of the warrant articles.
Oh, I understand that. I know we don't. Yes,
I do understand what you're saying.
I just
George.
think it's a secondary vote as far as the vote is concerned, particularly when there's 45 or 50 of them.
We obviously haven't had a chance to look at any of this yet, but we did have a brief conversation following, I think, the first meeting where the length of the warrant was discussed, and I can't speak for my two colleagues, but as I stated here last time, my preference is to reduce dramatically the number of warrant articles that we put forward. We know, and we all know, that our tax costs are driven by, in a large part, the warrant articles are passed. You know, when you get past your town budget and your school budget, of course, the school doesn't have many warrant articles other than their main one.
Reserve accounts. Yeah.
It drives our cost, and all those warrant articles that are posted are necessary items. But you take them individually as you're voting on them, and you don't see how the bottom line adds up. So what we have to have as a discussion as selectmen, is there was a time here in Littleton where there were very few warrant articles. Cars or vehicles were put in the budget. There were things put in the budget because it was part of operating.
I think that has been my argument, that we've lost track of the total amount because we place so many things in warrant articles. And just to make sense, just to bring it back so we have a totality, a total number right there. But I think a lot of those things, the roads, improvements, they were always placed in the operating budget, for the longest time. And maybe we need to return to that. And I'm sure
it's the equipment, it's the big purchases that are put out there. And on a statewide basis, it's recognized that the Senate Bill 2 legislation created this issue, where you can say, in all honesty, I want to put it out there and let the voters vote on this because this is a democracy. You shouldn't just hide it in the budget. On the other hand, when you do that and you continue to do it, you wind up with 7 pages of warrant articles, and you get caught up with an enormous tax bill increase. And that's not to say any of those aren't necessary. It's just that the structure of the Senate Bill 2 situation, and we've been criticized in the past, both on the school board and here, coming in with operating budgets well below what the default is. And in part, it's tied to what you're putting out there in warrant articles.
I know that we don't have. Do you want to go?
I do, because it's not that much.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll shut up.
So I believe we're done with page 31. There is a couple little increases in the tipping fees and rubbish transportation here. Library, there's no changes from what I gave you before. I've seen that there's roughly a 10% increase from last year. I'm not sure what's happening yet on this.
I know that you want to continue and finish this, but I'm thinking that we probably would like to have the library and the Parks and Rec visit us. So if we could schedule, I'm sure you two would like to be at that meeting as well. So if we can schedule that somehow.
So I'm going to bypass Parks and the library. Under Parks, I am going to mention the town manager did take out a couple items that were in here.
Well, we haven't got a chance to dig into that one.
Under debt service, I'm kind of proud of this. The town manager's budget is going to be $45,592 less than the last year's adjusted budget. So that's a reduction of 3.72%. What I've done when we've negotiated our bond and the selectmen approved, Andrew was okay with it, the first year of that $900,000 bond, we only have to pay interest. And the rest of it's financed over the next 14 years. So it's 15 years. But that way, because we're paying 3 loans off in 2017, that's going to pick up where that $900,000 bond is going to come in, and we'll have to start making principal and interest full payments. So working it that way, we were able to keep the debt schedule actually less than last year's adjusted. So
Thank you.
it kept that kind of steady. Thank you. Opera House venue revenues and expenditures. We have a building maintenance person that's helping us out in other departments, but also helping a lot in this area. We have a lot of work down there to do. This budget, the 2017 town manager approved, is $13,900 more than last year's. which is a 35.54% increase. And part of that is because we have this person that we're trying to get some things done. We've also included an increase on building maintenance, for general supplies. There's general supplies is an increase. We have to increase our liability insurance for the venue, but we want to get some things done down there. One, to stop it from going backwards, and two, to try to get either some more places where we could possibly rent, or start thinking about us getting back in there, one or the other.
And also more venues there, so.
Yeah, there's a great chance to rent that out more, depending on what we have.
Have we not mentioned it at all this year? It looks like nothing, right, so far this.
We don't get our amount until the end of the year.
Could we have, I know that, is it the Chamber of Commerce that is managing that? Could we also have them come and report what their plans are on that? That would be great.
And you thinking them and the library?
And the
perhaps
library and the Parks and Rec.
Try to do that on one night, or?
I think
It's a day. I don't know whether Roy did it or not. The Opera House floor looks unbelievable. It really looks like it's just brand new almost right now.
All right, under special detail outside, this is page 37 and 39. The difference between 2017 proposed and 2016 is $180, excuse me, it's a 2% increase. That's basically the retirement rate. Now this is a budget that we never know from year to year how much we're going to end up with.
I didn't know that.
Special detail, outside detail is when our police officers are able to go and, escort someone, and they're charged a fee for it.
Right.
Then on page 38 of 39, parking meters. This is a big change with the town manager's budget, actually being $22,127 less than last year's budget. We have removed the admin person that was part of this budget, moved it back to the police department. We are increasing the meter enforcement officer from 29 hours to 34 hours a week. That is 5 more hours. Hopefully we're going to get some more income from it.
Make it a insurance qualifying position.
I totally support that.
What is the revenue now?
The revenue, this is called a revenue neutral budget. And in order to reflect in our paperwork for DRA, and in order not to take money from the taxes or vice versa, the budget for this has to equal the revenues. So whenever this budget gets lowered, the revenue budget gets lowered. Doesn't mean that we can't take in more money. That money that comes in above the budget ends up going to the special revenue fund to later on repair sidewalks, parking meters, add parking meters,
Improve parking.
improve parking.
That's one of the goals, is to be able to actually generate some money to put into a fund that maybe could be used as a match for
So
parking prices.
the additional revenue can be used in many other ways other than improving the parking.
Well, it can be used for sidewalk improvements. There's a whole category that's part of the warrant article that set this up. And it talks about what it can be used for. It can be used for paying this person that's doing the parking meter enforcement, but it can also go for improvements on the sidewalks, for the parking meters. It can buy additional land for parking meters if we need to, and put in new ones.
We had a parking meter fund, right? It would have access money.
We have access money out of that.
And do we still have funds in that fund?
Very, very little.
Because it's gone to pay for admin and for the parking enforcement and all of that. So I think we need to look at the language so we really truly understand what that
And I can
means.
bring that
Yeah,
next time.
The select board in 1947, when they created the fund, allowed it to be spent on things other than just the meters. In fact, it can be spent on sidewalks that aren't even near the meters.
That's what I was concerned
Yeah.
about. So do we need to look at that and
Oh,
modify
well,
the language?
We can make copies of the minutes of that meeting. I don't carry them here today,
You
but I
don't?
carry them at
Are
the
we
meetings
digitized it?
and at the deliberative session, because it comes up periodically as to, those funds are restricted only for meters, and they're not. And this goes all the way back to that year when they first created it.
I think we paid the parking lot at Burner Park with those funds.
That-
Paul's got it.
It can be used to find, purchase, or create additional parking, free parking for the community. I think there's even a caveat in there for street maintenance, like
It is.
we've used it to paint the crossing.
The
The
crosswalks?
paint on the crosswalks. The big thing is that we'd be making money off of this fund if we didn't have to pay $19,181 on a payment that Mr. Moore's quite familiar with. We're paying for some parking spaces. It was a deal with another nonprofit, and they targeted this fund to make this payment out of this fund annually. If we didn't have that payment in there, essentially that $19,000 could be applied towards sidewalks and maintenance issues for the streets that we can't do right now. It's kind of holding our hands behind our back.
I think that's why I'm suggesting that we look at the language and
Right.
maybe bring it forward and have a discussion on that.
And I got one more page. The sewer fund. This was where you had asked a question earlier. The town manager's budget is $41,201, different than 2016 budget. That's a 5.39% increase. Now, some of that increase comes from the adjustment throughout the budget of other departments, and the biggest part of it was Public Works Director piece of that. Now, one other line that we've reduced, actually I don't see it reduced in,
It actually is a lower increase than we have here.
Yeah.
It's funds line, what was that one? 16?
16,
Yeah, that one actually should be, what did we drop that to?
$20,000 less.
20,000, so that
The
would be.
52 is 32.
It should be 32 if you deduct that from your bottom line. I think
It's actually less
that's
than
a lot.
5%.
Yeah, we're.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Tisk,
Next
tisk.
revision.
Yeah.
Tisk, tisk. So I
20,000.
don't know how we're going to coordinate with the Parks and Rec and the library and also the Opera House, the chamber. So do you want to get in touch
Do you want to
with?
bring them in for the next meeting, or do you want to have more of a special kind of work session with them? How would you?
I mean, what were you, I mean, obviously Paul is here tonight, but as far as the fire chief and the highway
Yeah, so.
super, when, are they actually gonna be here at some point now, or are you doing reading on?
Yeah, that's one of the items on here is I wanted to go ahead and schedule any of the ones, like if there was one piece besides maybe the big, four that you wanted to talk to, then let me know. But, so DPW, police has been here, I'm not sure if he'll probably be available again to go over in detail if needed. The fire chief, and Public Works, and we can get these others, and we just have to figure out how would you like to space them out.
I think probably the Parks and Rec and the library on a separate meeting from others, or do you want all on
Whatever can work. And we have another meeting like on the 22nd of November, is that too close to Thanksgiving? People, it's a Tuesday. I mean, all of a sudden it's going to
It's gonna be
It's gonna be
Christmas.
January. It's gonna- I think we should, if we can,
or
schedule,
October?
or October.
October might work better.
Yeah.
and Thanksgiving.
I mean, obviously, you know, I don't know if we were expecting this tonight, Andrew, but I mean, obviously you and Karen together collectively have done a lot
Fabulous.
more whittling, if you would, than in past years. So I mean, you know, in past years, sometimes it's a matter of Paul coming and explaining his budget with his enhancements that he would be looking for, and then discussing those, and then working it back from there to what we thought was affordable or workable. So you've already done, obviously, a lot of that in all departments.
It's a Tuesday.
So,
thing.
I mean, whether, for example, whether Paul and Joe and Joe,
Right.
you know, whether they still want
Oh, my
to come
goodness.
and have a half hour each to talk about their department and what they're, you know, envisioning,
It's the 18th.
whether they want to have that type of opportunity to go through the numbers that Karen's already gone through, but just to maybe highlight some things of what they're looking at down the road.
Yeah, I think they probably want to take that opportunity. It's just a good way to get on Channel 2 and educate the voters about what's happening, and they can even just talk about some operational things that, you know, the budget really reflects what's happening operationally.
So we were suggesting maybe an October 18th meeting for maybe the library, the parks, and maybe the chamber. But I don't know if that gives them enough time to pull, you know, their presentations together. It could be, would that be okay?
And the airport guy.
And the
And the
airport.
airport fellow.
So the 18th, we're going to do the airport, the chamber, the library,
What's this, October?
Parks and Recreation.
Yes.
18th,
Parks and
yeah.
Recreation.
Here at 4?
Is it available? I mean, do we have to do
Well, they'll check.
Yeah, and if this weren't available, we still have the option of
Go to
using
the Opera House.
the Opera House. So same, 2 weeks from today, obviously,
Yeah.
4 PM. So we're talking about the airport, the library, the parks, and chamber.
The reason for that, I think, is the November dates then, when the selectmen and the town manager have the warrant articles pulled together, it's easier to have the police chief and the fire chief to come in and not only talk about their budgets, but the warrant
At the same
articles
time.
all at the
Sure.
same time, so I think
So
that
November
makes sense.
15th, is that
Right,
right, in
yeah.
theory?
And one last thing, and I don't know if we have to get out of here, but it was brought up to me to ask this committee about the petition warrant articles and the presentations. It seems like it's such a negative to have vote no on the bottom. And we can't because of legal restrictions. Do we want to have any of these agencies that normally have a request come and do like a 5 or 10 minute presentation to
With the
us?
Boys and Girls Clubs,
Boys and
all those
Girls
ones
Clubs,
that all said
that sort
vote
of
no,
thing.
you feel terrible. You-
So
I know the rule, Bill, you have to say vote no if you don't approve it.
Many of them present at the deliberative session.
This would give them a good
Yeah,
opportunity
but
to warm up.
Yeah, I'm not opposed, I'm just
But
saying.
it
that you have
still, it
a-
still ends up with the budget committee looking like we just blanket said, no, and a lot of these are small
We
amounts.
feel the same way.
Yeah,
In fact, we've promised ourselves that we would talk to our legislative representatives about maybe
Changing that.
proposing new legislation to give select board, apparently the DRA is adamant in this area. I think this fight has gone on before us.
right.
But it's clearly not fair because individually as select people, we feel strongly about some of those warrant articles. But either you vote yes, or you vote no, or you stay silent, and silent is no.
And we stayed silent on several
We
of
did,
them last
we did
year.
them all, yeah. So maybe sometime in
We were struggling with that
November,
next
we
week.
can,
Okay, but get back, so October 18th, and we'll check here to see if this is available.
Okay,
And all those, we would try to make them half hour, so you would schedule them, so 4:35, and 5:30, and obviously try to keep them to that, because we want to get all 4 of them done that night, so I guess it wouldn't be any bad idea to tell them it's gonna be a half hour window, and,
max.
right, and to structure it, so that we can meet that criteria.
and then, yeah, that would be great, so.
And just to clarify, all the work that's been done on the budget, Karen's, says town manager budget, but really it's a collaboration between the department heads, Karen and I, and really trying to look at.
We're still gonna
And
get
that we didn't know.
Yeah,
You don't have a chance.
A little mea culpa.
Karen gets all the credit. Don't worry about it.
We all work together.
That's